I know that numbers are not the big thing. The Lord we may never be a big church, but I think we can be a healthy church, a church planting church, a disciple making church, and move forward in that. And I mean, I have dreams, in the sense of I want to be a church planting church. I want to send people all across the country, all across the world. I think this is what we've been called to. But it starts in our backyard. Like if we're not reaching people that here, then we're not going to reach people, 1,000 miles away.
Hey guys, Frank here with another episode of Modern Church Leader. Really excited to talk to Cody Evans today, you're not the senior pastor, but you are the pastor of like vision and teaching.
Yeah, preaching and vision. Yeah, that's right.
Preaching and vision, which just sounds cool to me. I mean, I want to hear a little bit more about what that means. But man, Cody, I'm excited to have you on the show and really excited to talk to you about kind of your recent experience at the church there and just shed some light on that. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, Frank, thanks for having me on. Excited to share the story of what God's done.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, just to start, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into ministry and how'd you get to the church you're serving at today?
Yeah, so I was young. I expressed a desire into ministry, and I was like 12 because I didn't know what else. I had a pretty interesting story. I was born at 2 pounds, wasn't supposed to live, and so the Lord just kind of worked through all those details. And in part of that, I was like, I want to give my life back to the Lord. And then I would probably express this differently now, but basically there was a desire to go into vocational ministry, and I ended up going to undergrad at Southeastern in Wake Forest, and then did an MDiv, and
Okay.
met my wife, and I actually got into ministry as a youth pastor in Durham, North Carolina, and I was there for a few years. Stepped down because we felt a desire to go into church planting, and we're at a church, a healthy church in Raleigh, that we were like, hey, let's go back there. I was talking with the pastor, like, hey, I want to get involved in church planting. I don't know what to do. It's like, all right, we'll come back. I was going to do another degree because I'm a glutton for punishment. And during that time, I was going to say, hey, all right, let's lead a small group. Let's build a team. Let's figure out where we want to go, and then we'll plant in 3 to 4 years. That was back in the summer of 2017.
Okay.
And during that process, we had somebody transition from the staff at that church, and so Pastor Wayne just asked me, he's like, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" I didn't even know that it was paid. I was like, "I just want to hang out with you and other people. I'll help you administer
Right.
different things." And so he was like, "Okay, by the way, you get paid." I was like, "Okay, great," and started doing that. And we were meeting regularly, talking through life, ministry, responsibilities. And November of 2017, I walked into his office and was like, "Hey, what's up? What are we talking about today?" or something like that. And he was like, "Do you want to go do a revitalization?" And I was like, "Maybe." I don't know. He's like, "It's in Franklinton, which is north of Wake Forest, north of Raleigh." And first of all, the church is not in Franklinton. He was wrong. But the church had reached out to
You're like,
him
Pastor,
and the pillar.
you didn't even know where I
That's
was
right.
going.
That's right. He was like, just you're going somewhere north of here. That's all that he knew. And my wife is from that area, and I was like, I think we would really be interested in that. We thought we were going to move to Charlotte or Eastern Tennessee or like South Carolina. We didn't know where we were going to go, and no place had really popped up that we felt a big desire. And this is where my wife is from. I was like, so let's do it. And so we sat down and talked to my wife. We prayed about it, like, hey, let's go do that. And so the church had reached out. They had already gone through a process of talking with a pretty large church in the area to become a campus, and they ended up voting no to that. That was almost a year process. So the church had already been talking about change. They just didn't know the right direction, and they ended up saying no to this church. And they then reached out to their kind of the state convention in North Carolina had said, hey, here are 3 options for you. And the Pillar Network was the second option. So they reached out, Pastor Wayne as a part of that. And that's how we got connected. And so what happened was the Pillar Network said, hey, Here's what we're going to do. If you really want to have change, this is what's open. Everything's on the table, and we're going to send someone to help lead through the change. We're not going to work at this point. We're not going to work with a team. We're going to send someone who wants to be here, wants to lead the church, and this is our guy. And that was really encouraging for me, for Dwayne to stand up and say, "Hey, this is the guy."
Yeah.
And so there were a couple meetings. The church votes. Yeah, let's go. Let's hear this. And so the network they went. This was a mistake that we learned. My wife's best friend was getting married the Sunday that they were going to go, and kind of talk about everything. I couldn't be there, and so there were things said, and there were expectations that walking into. So that was something I learned. Next time, be in the room when those conversations are being had. The next
Yeah.
Sunday, I preach in this kind of weird view of a call thing, like, if you want to go with Pillar, this is what you're getting, which wasn't great, I'm sure, to start out with. I hadn't, I was sort of the youth pastor, had opportunities to preach at the church I was at, but that was an interesting dynamic for them, I'm sure. No full time ministry experience at all. Had never been, a lead pastor or whatever, and so the church walks through that. We have a Q&A, and the church ends up voting yes to the whole process. And so Pillar works. There was this document that everybody signed and said, "Hey, look, here's what's going to happen. Pillar's going to provide this. They're going to provide resources and leadership, and there's some other things that come along with that."
Just for context, when you say pillar and you talk about the connection to some network, like what context is this all inside of? Is it in a
Yeah,
denomination, and what is pillar?
yeah. So we're a Southern Baptist church, and Pillar
Okay,
is a church planting network inside the Southern Baptist Convention, and
got it.
has
Great.
been. It's about a decade old, and it started out of a couple of churches, but Open Door Church in Raleigh was one of those first churches that started that. It's a growing network, and they've been a part, have provided resources and help and counsel and friendship and just lots of things. So they've been a part of the process every
Yeah.
step of the way. We couldn't have done what we've done without their backing in a lot of way. So that's the network that we're a part of, and we want to plant churches. We support churches across the country that are in the network that have been planted. So
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Okay, good. That's just good context for
yeah,
listeners and right, kind of like
for
wrapping
sure.
their brain around the story.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. So the church ended up voting yes. There were about 15 people there, and when votes come out, more people come than they're actually that are attending, right? So the vote was
Yeah.
14-9, and that's pretty close, right? So you're like, okay, we got some work to do. What I didn't know, I found out three
Right.
months later, was that actually there was a pastor and his wife who were really trying to work towards helping this church grow and helping this church, and they knew that that wasn't them. So they were part of the team that was trying to help pull the church into revitalization. And what I didn't know was that they were going to vote. Nobody knew that, which is not wrong. They voted, and two other couples that ended up leaving with them voted. So if you do the math, I'm now down 9-8 walking into the situation. Had no idea of that was the case. I just knew the vote was 14-9, and I'm trying to count. Like, who are these people? Like, I don't have all these people now. And so they voted at the end of January of 2018, and then that Monday, basically, hey, I'm rolling. This is what we're doing. And my wife and I, for those first two
And
months,
why did real quick, why did what's the context of the church? Like why was the church
mm,
looking to potentially merge with a larger church? Why was the church like evaluating that option or evaluating this other option? Like what was going on? What's the backstory on,
yeah,
the
good
church
question.
clearly kind of needing.
Something, yeah. So the church was down to about 15 people, and
Okay.
in the early 2000s, from the records that we have, they were pushing 300 in the early 90s, early 2000s. They had a heyday, and they had split twice in the early 2000s,
Yeah, that'll
and
that'll do it
they
every
just didn't
time.
recover.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't recover. One of those splits is still a church. down the road. And so we've been able to build a relationship with them. That's totally different now. I can share more about that later. But that brought, basically, you can see a steady decline for a decade of the church. People just didn't stick around, and it got tough, and there was nobody there to help lead through that transition and to provide a,
Mhm.
really, to be honest with you, to not even provide vision, but even counsel the wounds of all of that. That was what I noticed. And as I've talked to people, I'll meet people at a restaurant and they're like, "Oh yeah, I used to go to that church." I'm telling you, like it happens all the time. I'm like, everybody and their mama used to go to this church, because I meet people all the
Yeah.
time and say, "Oh yeah, I know where that's at. I used to go there." And so they had a huge impact for a long time,
Yeah.
and some stuff really hurt them, and they never recovered from it. So that was really
Yeah.
what we were
Got it.
stepping
Got it.
into, and
Okay.
there were, most of those 15, I would say 12 out of the 15 were people that experienced that pain, experienced that, and we're trying to say we want to move on from that. And that was the impetus for it. That's why they were looking. Like, we don't just want to call another pastor. We want to figure out what can we do to move forward and be a healthy church, because the community was changing. The church was, before the mid '90s. The church was on a dirt road, and you're like, wait a second, we're only 20 miles from Raleigh. Like, this, not like we're that far away.
Right.
But from what I understand, the church is on a dirt road, and the whole area is changing. Within the first year that we're there, they built 4 new neighborhoods, and since then, I can't even tell you. The growth from Raleigh's pushing north. It has nowhere else to go but north, and
Right.
so there's just so many people from
Right.
everywhere moving in, and the church is kind of like, we don't know what to do about that. We don't know who's around us. We don't know what's going on, and we need help. And there was some, that were like, we just need to get a pastor in here and he'll lead us. And it's like, no, like there needs to be some big overall changes that take place. So
Mhm.
we hit the ground running. Those first 2 months, my wife and I, she has our calendar. She's got pictures of it, I guess, just to tell the story. We every night for 2 months straight, we were either meeting with people from the church, having dinner with them, getting to know them, or we were meeting with people that we were going to ask to come on board with us in the area and say, "Hey, come help us at this church." And we listed
Right.
out a list of people. If we can get 20 people, if we can get 7 of these 20 people, the Lord is really kind, and we'll be ready to go. We'll be able to do ministry. All of them said no. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding you. Every single one of those people said no. And Pillar was trying to help me process, all right, how do we build a team while the plane's in the air? Because we're doing Sunday morning.
Right.
I'm still visiting. I'm going to the hospital. There's all these things that are going on. Well, we're trying to do ministry, but also kind of build and repair while we're flying a plane in the air.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that was crazy. And so through all that, though, the Lord was really kind. There were people that we never would have thought of that ended up coming to the church. People we didn't know. One of our other pastor elders, he is at our church. We knew of each other at Open Door, but we didn't know each other, and that relationship has been really sweet. And there's been other relationships that the Lord has brought that we just didn't think. And we had people who came for a period of time, 6 months to a year to 18 months, and the Lord moved them on, but they helped us become healthy, and they helped us get
Mhm.
moving in the right direction. And so that was
Right.
really, really good for us. So we spent that time, and probably into March, early April of 2018, I got a core group of guys, 3 other guys. Our other pastor currently was in that group, and we said, okay, how are we going to do this? Because there was a year to this document that everybody signed. We have a year to revitalize or replant this church. Everything was on the table: name, constitution, bylaws, leadership structure, all of it's on the table. We didn't say it was going to happen. We just said this is on the table. And so as we kept hearing stories and things like that, we figured out, hey, we're going to have to change the name of the church. The reputation of the church is too much to overcome. And let's not already have a barrier when we're trying to restart something. Let's go ahead and change the name.
Right.
And there were things, convictionally. I'm a pastor led, congregationally accountable, guy. So the church needs to be led by its pastors, and it needs to be held, accountable by the congregation. But the pastors need to be freed up to do ministry. And there were committees and all this other stuff. And so we rewrote all that. And what we did was we basically stripped everything down. That summer of 2018, we said we're not doing any other ministry, but we're going to gather here on Sunday morning. We're going to teach through the book of Titus because elder pastor leadership was a sticking point for them, and they had
Mhm.
some people had seen that abused, and so we had to walk through what does that look like. And then we talked through Titus, and then walked through, hey, this is a new constitution. We announced that we're going to change the name. We gave the name, and then we were able to talk through with the new constitution and bylaws. We're able to talk through this is how we're going to structure our church. And so we took about 2 months to walk through that. And we told them, hey, at the beginning of the summer, say, hey, we're going to vote at the end of July, and this is a once and for all vote. This is not we're not going to break this thing up. And I had lots of people come to me and say, hey, why don't we vote on this? Like, we love you, but why don't we vote on y'all and then vote on the name and vote on? And so I said, hey, look, I'm trying to give the most basic restart that there can be. So if you take anything out of the
Right.
Constitution that protects pastors or protects the congregation or any of that, then you're really taking, like, these are convictions here that I'm laying before you. This is not a huge, we're not outlining everything that we would do or would say, or so I said, look, this is pretty bare. I think the church needs to make a decision. Is it going to change, on that vote, or is it going to stay the same? And we worked through that. There were lots of meetings, a little bit of conflict in that, but we're able to shepherd through. And so Lord was really kind. At the end of July, we had added some members, in the spring, and the vote came out to 21-3. So we had won people over. We had added new families, and the church was in a healthy direction moving forward. And we changed
Yeah.
everything: name, leadership, constitution, bylaws. And so at that point, we had voted to replant. So basically, the church just restarted. Legally, we do business as Covenant Hope Church, but legally, we're still under the old name because it takes a lot of work to change the name legally. And
Mhm.
so that's where we've been pushing forward. That's kind of the story of how it started, and we've been rolling ever since.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Um, and when you say replant, did you have like did you own property? Did you go to a different location?
Yes, yeah, the
Did you
church owns
do a
this
big
property.
launch Sunday?
Yeah, so the church owns 11 acres. There's actually three buildings. The small chapel, we can't use it. They didn't take care of it for a period of time. It would be $700,000 to fix it. That's the kind of numbers that we're talking about. And the church doesn't have the money
Yeah.
to do that, knowing that we have other things that we need to address. So we had property, didn't move. All that stayed the same. We basically inherited. We took a remnant of people, inherited them and the land, and said, all right, how do we begin to flourish where God has placed? Because this church is in a strategic location. There are people moving here. There's plenty of room to spread out. There's plenty of room to do things, to host people on our campus. And we have lots of room to grow and be a healthy church for whatever that
Right.
looks like. And
Yeah.
so the Lord was really kind there.
And then did you do like a launch
Yeah, we did.
sorry,
So,
did you do like
no,
a launch weekend and what did that
yes.
look like?
Yeah. So, not as great as we had hoped. We ended up saying, okay, have we replanted, voted, covenanted as a church the next week in the first week of August, and we said, hey, we're going to relaunch publicly as Covenant Hope Church in, I think it was the 21st of October, something like that.
Yeah.
And we worked towards that. We did a community day on that Saturday. We had all these plans, and we went door to door, and or we did a lot of stuff. We invited. We had two partner churches that were involved in that. And the community day didn't go as well because it rained the whole day. And I don't mean just like it rained, like
Oh,
it
bummer.
poured the whole day. And we had it from like 2 to 4 or something like that. And like the last hour, the sun comes out. And we ended up having some families come and show up. And so we were encouraged. But for that first year, Frank, I'm telling you, every ministry thing we did outside of like off, just outside, it rained. We did an egg
Wow.
hunt the following year in downtown Youngsville. Poured rain. It's like everything we do, it rains. So in the midst of that, though, the Lord was really kind. We had our partner churches that helped us, cared for us, were a part of that service, and we relaunched. Like, hey, this is where we're going. and I preached, the first part of Mark's gospel and said, "This is what we're doing. We're going to proclaim Christ. We're going to preach the gospel and call people to live life like He calls us to." And that's really how we started. Had a meal after that. Packed our fellowship hall out. There were lots of people there that day that were just supporting us that didn't end up staying, but supported us on that
Right.
day and gave us some momentum to push into 2019 with.
Right. Um, well, like, how's it going now? So that was 2018 or
Yeah,
17?
it was
8
2018. 2018. I've been at the
2018.
church for 4
Yeah.
years. The church will be 4 years old. Covenant Hope will be 4 years old in August.
And you got to do it through COVID and all the
Yeah,
craziness as well. So you
yeah.
kinda had this relaunch situation, and then a year later, COVID hits,
COVID hits.
basically, like,
Yeah,
something like that, right? COVID hits,
yeah,
um, and
yeah. It's
then fast
been
forward 2 more years, and we're here.
yeah. So things are good right now. It's slow. We're not. Uh, it's pretty basic in the sense of what we do. I know that people aren't coming to Covenant Hope because I'm a great preacher. That's not why people are coming. We don't have cool stuff. We have an old church building that we're trying to take care of and steward well, but that's just not who we are. We want to be a
Yeah,
church in the community for the community, and so we have around 60 members, and we have between 80 and 95 on a Sunday, and
yeah,
I would probably say COVID actually probably helped us in some ways. There are some big churches in our area with people who are on the fringes of those churches who love Jesus but
mhm,
just never got connected.
right,
And you know, during COVID, we opened about as soon as we could open back. We had the space, we marked it off. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what decisions we were making at some level. Right? We
yeah,
said, "Hey, we want to meet. We feel like this is all this stuff. We'll do it the safest way we think we can." And we started meeting, and through that. I think people just began to feel like, hey, I'm not as connected to that church as I thought I was. And then we began to reach people right around the corner. We saw some people come to faith. We've reached literally. I can throw a baseball from the pulpit to this guy's house. He's a 72, 3 year old now. Was 71 when he professed faith in Christ a couple years ago. I mean, just beautiful story of us serving
yeah,
him and his family. And he comes to the church and was like, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about on Sunday mornings. Can you read the Bible with me?" And I was like, "Yes, I can absolutely do that." And just to see his story, he professes faith, gets baptized in his own pool in his backyard. We walked over there and just he got baptized. We baptized him in his own pool that day, and he's
that's awesome.
from the north, and so he loves Philly cheesesteak. Taught us how to make Philly cheesesteaks, and we served 100 some Philly cheesesteaks to people that day. So it was just those kinds of stories that the Lord was just doing, and we've seen Him work in different ways. And
Yeah,
through COVID, it was hard. We gathered together, but we didn't start a ton of stuff back. We just didn't know, and we had some medical professionals in the church. We have a good portion of nurses that were actually they were disagreed. So we were like, we're not sure what to do at this point. So we ended up saying, all right, look, we're
right,
going to
yeah,
gather, we're going to try some things. And what we told the church early on was we're going to try stuff, and if it works for a few years, great. If it starts to not work, then we'll cut it. There's no reason to do it anymore. It may work for a little while.
right,
And what we told the church that we're going to try stuff. It may be different. It may not work, but we're going to try it and move forward. And so we were able to do
yeah,
that, and we ended up starting our kids stuff, and that's been growing. We have kids running around. Did our first VBS last summer as Covenant Hope,
nice,
and was able to see lots of kids come to that and be engaged, and so that those kinds of things have been really good. I would say for me personally, it's been really really encouraging, but hard because for my time there, people are really starting to open up. Like people are really starting to share. This is what's going on, and it's hard. Life is hard. Community is hard. Walking with Jesus can be difficult at times,
yeah,
especially when you're doing it with other people. And so it's been a good, hard 6 to 8 months of just working and helping shepherd people and walking through that and calling people to love each other, respond, to repent if need, and but then walking in grace and forgiveness in those ways. So it's been really encouraging, really good. I'm excited for where we're going. I think we have a stable core. I would say we need to. We're still continuing. What does it look like for us to reach out? What does evangelism look like? What does it look like for us to care for our community? What does it look like for us
Mhm.
to be people that are inviting? We're super welcoming. Like if I think for the most part, every all the feedback we've got, like people are like, "Wow, y'all are such a welcoming church." But now we got to figure out how do we do that in our community, and how do we leverage our relationships for that? And that's some things that we're working through now. So
Yeah. You need more, non-rainy days is what it sounds like.
that's right. That's right. That would be great. We actually we were in downtown Youngsville on Saturday and did the egg hunt again. So the town of Youngsville actually, it's been a great relationship. And there's another church, a partner church, and then there's some other organizations that put on the egg hunt. And they call us. There's multiple events, the parade, Halloween. They call us, hey, we want you to come help. And so our church
Yeah,
is kind of out of downtown. It doesn't really fit in downtown. But we knew when we got there, hey, we have to identify somewhere to do ministry. And so that we have a missional community that meets near downtown Youngsville, and that has really helped us to say, hey, these are opportunities to be in front of lost people, to be in front
right.
of people, to make new relationships, and we've enjoyed that. And the town, I think, appreciates us saying, hey, let us know what we can do and how to serve.
Yeah. Well, man, it sounds like a huge, it it's, I think sometimes people can feel like the numbers, like, church being big numbers wise is like the win, but, that's not really true for 90+% of churches, right? Like the win is
Hmm.
that, this church saw that they had to do something different, and through a whole number of events, like God was working and, brought you guys there. And, the church was down to 10 or 15 people, maybe not even that once the six kind of left. And now you're, 60, 70 people with 100 coming on Sunday. And, even through COVID and kind of some crazy times, like that's beautiful, and you're
Yeah,
serving the community. You're being a light to, the neighborhood, the 72-year-old that got baptized, and the downtown community that you're serving in. I mean, that's like what kind of the soul of the church, that's like that's it right there.
yeah, it's been really encouraging to see that, and I know that numbers are not the big thing, and the Lord may we may never be a big church. That's I don't even think that's the way the Lord has gifted me. If we
Right.
got to around 200 people, I think I'd probably reach my leadership, max at that point. But I think we can be a healthy church, a church planting church, a disciple making church, and move forward in that. And I mean, I have dreams,
Right.
in the sense of I want to be a church planting church. I want to send people all across the country, all across the world. I think this is what we've been called to. But it starts in our backyard. Like if we're not reaching people that
Hmm.
here, then we're not going to reach people, 1,000 miles away. And
Right.
remembering that, and I was at a conference recently, and there's a church I look up to in North Carolina, and like yeah, we're 7 years old, but we're going to send our first church plant out this year, and I was like, whoa, like okay, maybe I can pump the brakes a little bit and just say let's just be faithful with where we are. Let's send
Right.
people in Youngsville before we start talking about sending people to plant churches somewhere else. Let's make sure we have those things. Not that the Lord can't do that, but I think I was beginning to change the number from hey, how many people can we fit here to how many people can we send, which are good things. But I was beginning to make that probably an idol at some level because that was we
Right.
wanted to put our stamp on that. And I think the Lord's been dealing with me in a lot of ways of like, hey, you don't need to put any numbers on it. You be faithful, and I'll take care of all that other stuff. So it's been good.
Yeah.
Lord's been
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
kind to me in that way.
It's good to have, hopes and dreams and visions, right? And kind of stay plugged in and let God lead the way. But course correct and all that along the way. But I think being inspired to go do something, whether it's plant locally or abroad or just even further out into the US, like I think that spirit of like doing something and kind of growing and serving and not being stuck, like I feel like I see that in pastors where you see their church doing well, right? And I don't mean
Mhm.
that by numbers, I mean it by, wow, you see like a healthy church, you see a church that's like really making an I
Yeah.
feel like oftentimes it's because the senior leadership, like is getting after it. Like they have something they want to do and they're on that
Yeah.
mission to do it, whatever it is, whatever they feel called to do, right? And when you don't see that, you oftentimes see these churches that are just kind of existing and,
Yeah.
not really
That's for
going
sure.
anywhere.
And I think we stepped into something that's similar across the state of North Carolina. So their stats out. I just saw the new one. 82% of churches in North Carolina are plateaued or declining. That's just
Mhm.
that's a massive amount of kingdom resources that we're talking about that are going to close
Right,
their doors.
right.
And that I don't stay up at night. I get to sleep and I sleep pretty well for the most part, but that will keep me up. And I want to help
Yeah,
churches in North Carolina, really across the nation. But I know for us, our impact in North Carolina, say, hey, how can we help be a resource to you so that you can experience, in a lot of ways, revival, but a refreshing to see God move in a lot of ways. And I think that's what's
yeah,
driving me for some reason. I don't know why, but does drive me. I'm from North Carolina, love our state, and lots of opportunity. And there's lots of churches that need a restart. They really do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
What do you think, just kind of in wrapping up, I got a couple questions. Like, what do you think, if you could pinpoint it, when it came down to like re-engaging those early leaders that kind of jumped on board with you and got inspired to replant and revitalize things, like what was the key to like that connection, inspiring those early relationships, motivating them to come on board?
I think it was time. I don't know. I don't think I said anything spectacular or like eye opening at all. What we really try to do is just love people. Like I really try to have them in our
Yeah.
home, be in their home, share. I was honest about this is what I want to see God do. Um,
Mm,
and I think for the people that stuck around, you know, 4 years later, there are people that love us that we have deep relationships with. And I think what it was like to say, hey, look, I don't know all the answers, but I know that we have to do something different. And, and we spent time with them. So we have an older
mhm.
member. She's currently homebound, has had a struggle. She's 93 years old. And she was a matriarch of that church for a long time. And the first Sunday I was there, I preached, got done, and she said, "You're coming to my house on Wednesday." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And my wife and I went over, and she asked me some tough questions that night, and she asked, "Are you going to change the name?" I don't know, maybe. And we talked, and we did that for a while. We would go over on Wednesday before we had other church activities, and she would cook us vegetable beef soup and some other things and blackberry cobbler, which she could make that blackberry cobbler all the time. That'd be great. And so she just, we were able to spend time with her. Before the vote,
Yeah.
she broke her hip. She couldn't be there. And I get to the hospital. Like I get called, I think at like 6:30 in the morning. Hey, she's in the hospital. Get in the car, go to the hospital. I walk in the room, Frank, and she's like, Cody, I'm worried about this vote. I mean, she's in pain. And she's like, I'm worried about it's like 2 or 3 weeks before the vote. And I said, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the vote right now. I'm worried about you. And I say that to say, in the midst of that, she said, and we had announced everything. Hey, we're going to change the name and all that. And she said, Cody, I don't like everything that you're doing, but I love you and I'm behind you 100%. And I was like, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, I can't ask
Yeah.
for anything else. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful for that. And that's been the kind of relationships that we've had over the years with multiple people that have loved on us and
Yeah.
supported us. And there's been times of, not many, but there's been times of really hardship, like real, like people are not happy. People really struggle through the change, and we had to work through that.
Mhm.
And there's even
Yep.
been family meetings, our business meetings, that we do, that we've had some really hard questions come up, and we've had to be able to shepherd through those. But at the end of the day, I do, I know it's cliche to say it, but people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like they really just don't. And I've really tried to say, hey, look, you're invited into my home. I want to be in your life and just walk with them. That's the biggest thing that I've been able to do. And I think that's the way the Lord has made me. I'm a relational person. My wife says that we can, I could be the most tired. People can come over, watch watch the NBA playoffs this week, and I'll be charged up, ready to go. I'll be able to go play at
Yeah.
midnight when I'm normally asleep by 10 o'clock. But if people are here, I get energized, and so I think the Lord was
Yeah.
just gracious to use that. Like I just want to be around people, and I want to be around our people, and I want to love on them and help them walk through. This is what it means to be a follower of Christ. This is what it means to be in a healthy church. And when those hard
I love
conversations
that.
come, now I think they trust. Okay, that makes sense. And what I said from the beginning, we didn't own a home yet. We didn't know what was going to happen before the vote. I told them, I told everybody, my desire is to be here for the rest of my life. This is not a stepping stone. This is not a move to get somewhere else. Like I want to be here. I want to see God do something here in this area and in this church. And that's still what I pray for. I'm currently still bivocational, but there's some other reasons for that. But we believe that this is where God wants us, and we know
Yeah.
this is where God's going to do something. It may not. There are things that we don't even can't even imagine, but we'll take it one step at a time.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Cody, this has been great. Thank you for sharing your story. And just, I
Yeah.
think pastors can relate in lots of ways. I think pastors can relate from your just, your kind of normal, kind of regular church that's in a community, serving people, loving people, going through some tough stuff. But I think loving folks and serving people through it is something that sounds like you've done an excellent job at. So thanks for sharing your story today.
Well, yeah, Frank. I hope so. I hope the Lord is pleased and will continue to do that. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you and what you guys are doing and the resources you give out. So thanks for having
Hey,
me again.
let me ask
Thanks
you
for
two
having me
quick.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. I got two quick questions though before we jam.
Okay.
First one, what's a book that you've read that like had a massive impact on you? And you can't say the Bible. I know the Bible. You got to pick another
Sure.
one.
Sure. I got it right here. The Shepherd Leader by Timothy Whitmore.
Nice.
Um, Fantastic book. I'm working my way through it again. We're working through it. Me and our other pastor elder working through that,
Love
and
that.
has been really good for me. Just this is what it means. For some reason I've been seeing this, and it made me pick the book back up. We keep seeing people guys say, "Hey, I'm called to preach," but we don't see guys say, "Hey, I'm called to shepherd." And I love to
Mm,
preach, right? It's in my title. Like that's what I want to do. But being a pastor means I'm shepherding people, which goes back to the time. And I think that this book really highlights, well, this is what it looks like to care for people. And I think
yeah.
it's pretty practical in that sense. It gives you kind of a matrix to work through and how to do that well.
Yeah. Love that. Second question, what's a podcast you're listening to right now?
There's multiple. Hmm, I would say Pastor's Talk by Nine Marks is probably the one I go to most
Okay. Pastor's Talk. Love it.
at this point.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, Cody, this has been great, man. I appreciate you. What's the church website real quick before we take off?
www.covenanthope.church.
Covenanthope.church. Great. Folks should go
Yeah.
check you guys out and see
Yeah.
how you're doing church out there.
Yeah. 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 Thanks, Frank. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day and a great Easter coming up.
Yeah, amen to that. Thanks, Cody. Thanks everybody for listening in today. Appreciate you guys. We'll catch you next week on another episode of Modern Church Leader. Bye-bye.